Tag TV, and Tag Radio. Technology now has a voice of innovation and information. Get it on www.tagtvonline.com. CEO, GM, COO. If you are a C-level executive or founder of a company, it's time for a serious tech talk about being good, being very good at disciplines you need to succeed, like your need to plan strategies, communicate and coordinate resources, how to select and manage people effectively, design and manage departments. In today's hyper-connected global economy, you need a system to design and optimize your entire business model. Greetings, everyone. It's Tuesday, September 2nd, 2008, and this is Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino Mandela. Staying at the front of the pack, effective leadership, and a world where the only constant is the need to keep learning. On today's Tech Talk, it's all about C-level growth and leadership development that separates the truly successful from the average. Tino faces off with the man who has trained hundreds of CEOs and senior executives to become world-class leaders, author of 4 books on business growth and entrepreneurship, builder of 2 businesses from zero to over $100 million in sales, and generator of over $1 billion in shareholder value for his investors. Robert Norton, President and CEO of C-Level Enterprises. Listen up, Mr. Executive. It's time for a CEO boot camp, the only comprehensive training for CEOs developed and delivered by a CEO. If you're an executive, start up through $100 million in sales, this Tech Talk adventure in growth, leadership, and career-changing learning is for you. 6 management systems to rapid growth that will have you shifting into high gear in your business management race to succeed while moving ahead of the competition by transforming from gut entrepreneur to professional management best practices. Up to the challenge? Tino Talks Boot Camp for CEOs with the man who created the concept and delivers the knowledge you need to succeed, President of C-Level Enterprises, Robert Norton.
Bob, thanks for joining me on Tech Talk.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
We've been good partners now for, I guess, what has it been, 3 years?
Yeah, a little over 3 years maybe, yes.
Yeah, and we've brought some folks through boot camp here in the Atlanta area. Actually, they've come from around the country to be part of your program, which is, I think, a tribute to what you've been able to put together. For our listeners, I think they'd like to hear right off the bat, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got boot camp started, and specifically how you came up with this theme of 6 management systems.
Sure. Well, I started my career as a technologist, actually, a software engineer, and then systems engineering and design and architecture, but quickly moved into management as a director of software development and then a VP of engineering. So I had a very structured and analytical and logical training. In 1989, I founded my first company, which was one of the first companies to do virtual touring of homes and multimedia. That went from zero to about $150 million in annualized sales within 14 months after launching the product. And I'd also been part of a company called Thompson Financial Services, where I ran a skunk works and created all the products, developed them, had 60 or 70 developers working for me there and in generating products. But so I guess I've been a CEO now for about 18 years. And in 2004, I did the first CEO boot camp, and during the nuclear winter, if you will, of venture capital, when things were very slow after the bubble burst and that sort of thing, I started doing some consulting and writing some books, and found myself repeating a lot of stuff and figuring out what people didn't know that I knew. And so I wrote up all this material for my clients because I didn't want them paying an hourly rate to be doing the same thing all the time. Boring for me, but I know it. I had 3 or 4 books worth of material, and I had decided to create the CEO boot camp because that work kind of connected what I had learned over 16, 17 years as a CEO at that time and what people didn't know And the idea was to really shortcut that learning curve for people and give them all in one chunk, a real jump in every area of the business and strategy and practices. And so, we've had probably about 1,000 people through the CEO Boot Camp program now. I think this will be the 5th one in Atlanta, and we do it all over the country 4, 5, 6 times a year typically.
So, in the introduction that you had, we talked about companies up to $100 million, but I'm thinking that and sitting in on some of the sessions, it's not as much about the size of the budget. It's sort of the position that the person's in and their readiness to move from seat of the pants to professional management. So how do you determine, again, for our listeners, what is that right time to think about a program like this, or, more specifically, actually move into professional management?
Well, typically we look at 5 stages of a company's development in the model. We use, raw startup when you're working on the plan and in the garage and, just a couple of people, and then moving into a launch mode where, you're getting the product development going and getting it out the door. And then stage 3 is really where you hit a lot of changes in how you have to operate. So typically, it varies by company and industry and ratio, but typically somewhere between 12 and 25 employees, you need to beginning to implement some professional management best practices, because now, you're managing through a level of people and not hands-on and can't stay up with everything that's happening in the organization. So the CEO's job and role really morphs from one of product champion and or first sales champion to one where they need to be developing the team and putting in place systems and getting ready to scale the business, which is what happens in stage 4. So typically somewhere between 10, 12, and as high as 25 or 30 people. You really need to step back and really begin implementing, maybe not all of these management systems, but let's say 3 out of the 6 ought to be implemented, by the time you're early in stage 3 development.
And we all know people that step aside somewhere along the line, and those entrepreneurs that are working in the garage are not necessarily the ones that are going to build these companies, and sometimes they realize that. And sometimes they don't. But the more important question, is this something that can be learned? So, you're working with a range of people in this ability or inability to make that transition. Is that why most founders, step aside or sometimes are pushed aside in respect to this growth period and how to manage that growth?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I do believe it's very learnable, but, it's about recognizing what you don't know, as Socrates said, it's the wise man who knows what he doesn't know,
right.
Or woman, and essentially you want to get ahead of the curve and begin looking at these things in advance. And that's what I do with my CEO coaching work. I really help people to prepare for that and transition smoothly so that they don't hit a wall. But they're putting these things in place little by little as the company grows.
Well, what are the 6 system components, and can you give some evidence in terms of the corporate value for those?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first we should mention that we're doing a free teleseminar for 10 members on September 9th that will be a whole hour and a half on these and go through them in detail. But let's name them a little now to give people a taste or a flavor of what that will be. The 6 systems, which all kind of hang together and support each other in the structure that I've developed here, are the strategic plan, which everyone knows, and we have a strategic planning process. I mean, what does that look like? And we try to teach people to fish. Not fish for them, as some consultants might do, but really give them a whole process for strategic planning. The second system is a management by objective system, or MBOs. This system alone the research shows enhances a company's value generation by 56%. Those companies that have a goal and goal tracking system, which is all an MBO is, with a particular structure to enhance accountability, to improve synergy and communications within the team, to track progress, to take the CEO out of the middle of being the nexus of the communications as things get way too big. And so that system number 2 is a management by objective system that is benchmark, weekly, monthly, at least, and quarterly, and sometimes, on certain things daily, although that tends to go down into the individual departments. The third system is a dashboard system. That is the tracking of the metrics within the organization, where you're hopefully looking at things that are leading indicators as opposed to just financial budget numbers, the financial stuff being kind of the rearview mirror and the dashboard being the trends so that you're ahead of the curve in getting ready for things. And it's very important that those trends are done in ratios so that as the company grows rapidly, that data isn't masked in the absolute numbers with rapid growth. The fourth system is a budgeting system, which is not only the budgeting process, but obviously tracking to budget so that individual departments are empowered to do things that are creative, to run their own experiences and kind of empower and grow each manager to get them ready for rapid growth of the company. I see a lot of companies that get budgets in place on the departmental level way too late, and the result is that when they have to do it, that the managers are doing it for the first time, and so it winds up being a learning experience way too late. The fifth element of the 6 management systems required for rapid growth is the documenting of some of your key value processes. And this doesn't mean every process in the organization. It means those that you've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into to learn and create a lot of value for your customers and or you internally. They may be proprietary processes. It may be, your R&D process or your product development or product launch process. And the more you get that out and document it, the more you have the ability to improve it and refine it and maintain the philosophy and the institutional knowledge as the company really scales. Because, as happened to me, when you go from 20 people to 125 people in 1 year, the dilution of the knowledge and the brain drain, is a big problem in the organization, and this kind of averts that problem. And then the last system of the 6 is really your human capital acquisition and development system. And that can be the last one sometimes that you implement, although, of course, you need to be doing and selecting the right people earlier. But that's when you're starting to get more formal with your human resources and hiring and training processes and those sorts of things. And we provide a structure for each of these, which, of course, you can add your own flavor to. So those are the systems.
Well, we're running out of time, but I did want to talk about one other thing, and that is the people that have attended this from TAG members and TAG stakeholders have really raved about the outcome. They felt like there are some tools in the toolbox that they can apply immediately. But one of the unique things about this is that we're not talking about a 6-week program. You really get a lot of information in a couple days that seems to be beneficial and of interest to busy CEOs that can't necessarily commit all that time to, or C-level leaders that can't commit all that time. How'd you come up with that, and have you gotten favorable reviews on that from your attendees?
Yeah, no, the testimonials are great, as you said. I mean, I literally have people call me up, the day they get home and say, my God, I've been working on this problem for 4 years, and I solved it on the way home on the plane using the tools that I taught over the last 2 years. That's an actual testimonial from people. So it is very intensive. I mean, that's why we call it a boot camp. It's not basics. It's very serious, high-level strategic stuff, but it's tied in to a roadmap and to step-by-step processes that help you segregate out the problems. And so it's a lot of lecture format. I've been accused and stand guilty of probably cramming about twice as much material into an hour as your typical seminar would. But the senior people can do that because we learn based on what we already know, and because we're only dealing with senior CEOs and senior executives at the C level, they can absorb information and hang it on what they know pretty quickly. But then we also do an experiential learning workshop that burns it into the synapses by using it, because we all know, you can read a book about riding a bike, but until you do it, you're not going to really get it. And so we actually go through and use the processes late in the second day, and that really connects it to the real world and practical applications, so that when people go home, they've really burned it into their synapses. And we give out a 400-page manual and a CD-ROM with all of the forms and tools and slides and that sort of thing on it too, so that they can take them back and implement them, and they get a license to use them within their company and train their own team on them. So there's a lot of leverage in that.
Well, so our listeners, you have this opportunity to attend by phone the September 9th webinar that Bob will lead. It's going to be about an hour and a half. It's free, and so we'd love for you.
Tag members. It's $39 to non-tag members. So
right. So be a tag member, and it's free to tag members. And so sign on and participate in that. And this will give you more of a flavor for the program. Bob, do you have the date of our program here in?
September 23rd and September 24th is the C-Level Boot Camp that we're doing at TAG headquarters. 9/23
and 9/24. So, get a sampling of all the great things you're going to be learning at the September 23rd, 24th event by dialing into the September 9th event. You can call us at 401-817-3333. It's also out on our e-weekly and can be found on the website. So, Bob, thanks for joining me on Tech Talk, and looking forward to seeing you in Atlanta later in September.
Great, thanks. Look forward to it.